Committee meeting. Yeah. This is the second of a two-day meeting.
Okay, here we go.
And in addition to the work that we do this morning, we're going to approve our not approve, but go through our subcommittee reports and see what information the subcommittees bring to us. But we'd like to start out by looking at the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I think you have those in your packet, and I'll give you a quick 30 seconds to glance at it and see if hopefully you've read them before, if you have any corrections.
I do have a correction.
Okay, thank you.
Catherine Boucher-Herdman is named as the chair of the grad subcommittee, and I'm actually serving as the chair. She is on the committee, though.
We'll make that change.
Okay. Any other corrections? There's no other corrections. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
A second.
Melissa? And
Michelle.
Michelle seconded. Thank you all. I think we're ready to move on with our subcommittee reports, and Michelle, if we can start with you on the graduate application.
Okay.
Ready?
Yesterday when we met, we went through all of the proposed items for the grad app, and we kind of grouped them into several different areas. So I'm going to go over the ones that we would like to present for action, and then some items we took off the table, some permanently and some just postponed till we can get more information. So our major item that we want to request is the lengthening of the first name, middle name, and last name field on Apply Texas, in order to accommodate those students with much, much longer names. And that will, as far as what we recommend in terms of the length of the fields, will depend upon what the SISs can accommodate or handle, and also with a little bit of determining, how many fields will accommodate the most percentage of students. So if 20 fields accommodates 90% of the students, it may be decided that that's sufficient, not necessarily all names. Our minor moderate items are provide a pick list of countries when filling in the list of institutions attending, and that one we understand could be done. That's our first priority. Our second priority in this list is to add organization to the references on the grad and international grad apps. Currently, when a student lists a reference, there is no indication as to whether or not that individual is from a higher ed institution, whether it's somebody who is in a company. So it's a very reasonable request, it seems.
I'm sorry, when you say a reference, are you literally talking about someone who is being listed as a reference for this person? Okay.
Yes, someone being listed as a reference. There, typically, when you're listing a reference, you will ask for how you know them or who they work for or whatever. In this case, there's nothing to indicate that.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is grad international?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Grad and
International grad.
International grad, the graduate apps.
Yeah.
And our third minor is to recommend wording change to explain ultimate degree. And this is contingent on the grad users. We're going to send out a question to them if they think that changing the wording would be helpful to them. The grad users did ask that particular question be removed. However, there are schools that are using that, and there are other schools who are kind of thinking that they might use it. So we decided that we would leave that question on the app for the sake of those who are invested in that, and maybe see if there's some clarification in the wording that would help students. And some of these recommendations come from throughout the year, what we hear in our offices as to, how many students are writing us and saying, what does this mean? Or do I have to fill this out? A lot of the recommendations that we bring forward are a result of student feedback and what troubles them on the app. So, the longest list you'll be happy to hear are withdrawn or postponed items, so I'll just go through those quickly. There was a request to remove the high school question from the grad app, but we are withdrawing that request because that is helpful in residency and could be part of the residency module, and it's also part of the student's education history, so we felt that should be withdrawn. Request to allow 2 fee postings, a regular fee amount and then a late fee posting. We're postponing that. We're not withdrawing it altogether. But again, we're going to follow up with the grad users and see how many of those users would use that, and if maybe messaging would be a sufficient solution to that as opposed to changing the structure of the fee postings. The next item is to allow payment options determined by application level or type. For instance, one school, their graduate level does not accept checks, but their undergraduate level does. And again, we're going to bundle that with the question above, or the request above that has to do with fees. And again, ask the schools if maybe that could be handled through messaging. It gets pretty messy having to go out there and make these choices. If we make changes like that, then everybody is constrained to go to the admin site and make choices. And so we have to determine whether that's really in everyone's best interest. The fourth one, apply Texas logic to perform an audit to ensure that the graduate will have a degree by the time that they enroll in grad school. That one again is being postponed. We need additional justification for that, and there are some exceptions to that were brought up, that there are some possibilities that a student would enroll and potentially earn both their bachelor's and their graduate degree at the same time. So we're not sure that will serve everybody well. The next was to develop a transient app for the graduate level. This request has been withdrawn because there was minimal support for this, and there are too many other needs that are of much greater consequence. Making the educational ladder required when it's displayed. Again, this is something that we're going to recommend that people handle with messaging because the educational ladder is optional to display. So it seems reasonable, rather than making it required, that a school would be able to put a message out there and let the students know whether that particular institution in fact requires that be filled out. And my final one is a request to provide the grad level a readmit application. Again, the goal is to provide the reason for it is a less cumbersome, a less extensive application. We're going to postpone that and do our best to determine the need for that. How much buy-in do we have from the people who are actually using the grad app? And I know there's discussion about potentially shortening the undergrad readmit app and potentially the 2-year app. So it's possible that we could bundle this with that discussion. All of these items were on the list yesterday. We tried to cover everything that was on there that had a grad emphasis and leave you with an answer to each item. So.
Thank you. Lee, can you give us your report on the common nursing application? You ready?
Sure. Good morning. The nursing application subcommittee met yesterday at the recommendation of the Applied Texas Advisory Board, and we had 6 members to attend. And our committee basically determined that the common nursing application needs to go to negotiated rulemaking. The Applied Texas Advisory Board nor the Nursing Application Subcommittee has the authority to determine what goes on the application or even who participates in the application. So our committee, I think, work is done for this cycle only because we need more input from the coordinating board as to what actually needs to go on the application.
Jane, any comments on that? Are you comfortable with that recommendation? Since it's a new app, I think it seems appropriate.
We just didn't want to get into the procedures of what goes on the app, then who has to participate in the app, and I guess we need more guidance from you all.
And last year, our charge had been apparently from the legislature to make a recommendation if there was even feasible to have a common nursing app, and we did last year hold stakeholder meetings, and our recommendation from the Applied Texas Advisory Committee last year to the coordinating board was that it was feasible. So I agree with Lee that to that extent we've done our work as the charge.
We can certainly take this into consideration as far as the negotiated rulemaking. My first thought is it's a very, very small set of schools, and to have the whole committee looking at that narrower is the same problem you had here. I would imagine, and so, but yes, we will definitely look at that as a possibility.
And my understanding was the goal of the common nursing application was to try to make sure that, because in some parts of the state it's very competitive. There's not enough slots for people, and then in other parts of the state there was slots available, and so I think the idea of the common nursing app was that students could apply to multiple places or other places where they might have the opportunity to get in and may not be aware of it.
But were there discussions about the possibility of just simply having a posting, a statewide posting of capacity of the nursing departments?
No, because the charge had actually been to us to look at the feasibility of an application.
Okay, thank you.
And there is information on file. There was actually a meeting February 2014, so last year, about a year ago, and they brought stakeholders here from the nursing community, and there's information for you all to review.
Very good. Thank you very much.
I just had a quick question. Based off that charge, did you all also look at transfer app for nursing?
We did not.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good job. Melinda, are you ready to report on scholarship?
Hello. I'm the chair or sub-chair committee for the scholarship module of the application, and we met yesterday, and there were 6 members present, along with one, Tim, and then one member of his team met with us as well. And we reviewed 2 of the survey feedback in regard to the scholarship application and the usability of that application. And we also discussed the institutions that were currently using the scholarship module in order to determine the likelihood of responses received from the 2 surveys that were sent or given, one at TACRO at this last conference as well as on the TACRO listserv. And we did receive minimal feedback because if we're looking at it as it is right now as the scholarship module, which is a part of the actual application. So we've been attempting to determine the need and usability of the application and actually the purpose of this subcommittee. We did discuss the 5 questions that are asked on the application and the length, and to determine if that's part of the issue with the application and determining the length of the responses, the answers, and then also because it doesn't currently, based on feedback received within our discussion yesterday, the length of the questions or the answer slots don't allow the student to elaborate very much on the application currently. And then we discussed trying to determine how the institutions who are currently using it, if it is their sole application. And then we also discussed possibly receiving feedback from the applicant, the student using the application, to determine if there's anything that should be changed. And then we did have, we tried to determine the actions of the subcommittee yesterday, and we have 3 of those, one being no changes necessary to the application, 2, to determine if the questions are valid or should the module be expanded or modified, or have further considerations of the module to determine what modifications can make it better so more institutions would use it. And that's been the scope of, at least since we've been the time that I've been on this committee, to determine why are there so few institutions using it. Our recommendations for changes to the scholarship module are, if it's possible, and this could also be an issue for the student information systems, if we can lengthen each answer slot to mirror question 1, which is determining special circumstances, to 6 lines at 80 characters each for each question. However, we did want to, because I know there's some in the on the committee that use the scholarship application, we wanted to also determine, of the institutions using the scholarship application, what are they using it for? And we know what they're using it for. However, do they also use a scholarship application provided by another vendor to obtain additional information? And will this recommendation to increase the amount of space cause any issues to those institutions?
This is probably the piece of this that I know the least about, so I'm probably going to ask a couple of dumb questions. But what's stimulated the look into this? Was there, how did this get started?
I'm going to address that because I'm the one that started this. I guess helping the students fill out the application, and when they fill it out, there's some general information like what do the parents do, their employment, the salary, but I think it's 5 or was it 5 or 6? I call them the Miss America questions. 6. Because they ask things like, okay, tell me why you want to come to this university. What are your career goals? What are your educational goals? And the very first one says, describe any personal obstacles that you've had or some difficulty. And that one the first one has 6 80-character lines, right?
Yes, it's 6 80-character lines.
The other ones have 2 little lines. So you have to tell the university in 2 little lines, which is really 1 sentence, why you really want to go to that university or what do you plan to do. And if these are used in the scholarship, like if they use a matrix and they're counting this, you cannot possibly express anything in 1 sentence. So I was like, either remove them or maybe just leave one that, like even the difficult circumstance that at least gives you a depth or an understanding of, I really need this scholarship because both of my parents lost their jobs, or, my mom's really sick with cancer, or, at least it gives you some inkling versus I see the standard answer. I want to go to UT because it's a childhood dream, or I want to bleed orange, or I want to be an accountant. Like, I can't possibly see how that one line, and yet, and then some of the kids don't want to do it because they're like, oh, I have to answer more questions. It just, I don't feel, having been before I was a counselor, I was an English teacher before, so it just blows my mind to be able to think that a one-liner or 2 little 80, are going to be able to paint a picture.
I've had some experience from the receiving end of scholarship applications, and typically, a scholarship application, the donor or the source of the funds has very specific eligibility requirements that have to be addressed. And so what I'm hearing this application does would not do that. It would not address the most specific information that was needed to enable someone to get a scholarship.
Texas A&M uses the scholarship app heavily, actually, and we used to have our own app, our own scholarship app, and one of the complaints of that was that a student was having to repeat a lot of the information they had already provided us on the Apply Texas app. And so adding the scholarship module was a logical and very helpful to the student extension. One, it has increased our scholarship applicant pool tremendously because a student, one, knows that a scholarship app is required at that point. You know, if you separate the scholarship app from the application for admission, then you have to educate all students that there are two parts to this. And so we have found it to be very helpful. And so all of the what happens is a lot of the information that is on the app, like the extracurricular activities, the essays can be borrowed from that. All of that information in our instance is fed not only to admissions, but that data is fed to our scholarship group. And then they also get the additional scholarship portion. There are custom questions in there as well. So they use the custom questions to kind of go over and cover some of those things you're talking about, Jane, where a specific scholarship would require that. We do have a couple of scholarships that require an additional essay, and so there's some messaging in the scholarship app that lets the student know that if you want to be considered for this particular scholarship, you must also provide us this additional information. But it has been a tremendous avenue for getting more participation from students in being considered for scholarships.
I guess
It's because I want to clarify this. The scholarship application is a good tool, because it does take the kids through custom information they've got to do, and you'll see the listing of the UT or all the A&M. They check off the ones you want to apply. And a lot of the information, Michelle is right. It's just that section, that little piece where you have in 2 sentences or 1 sentence to answer those. That's all that I wanted to address, was just that area, which we discussed and came up with a solution, which was adding more lines, more space. The same as the first. Why would the other ones you have 2 lines when the very first one at least allows you 6 lines? And that was the only issue I had with that, not the actual scholarship app.
how many institutions are using the scholarship app?
There's 6. It is Texas A&M, Texas State University, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, Texas A&M Galveston, Texas Tech University, the University of Texas at Austin, University of Texas at El Paso, and University of Texas at San Antonio.
Okay.
So another part of I'm sorry.
Part of the, just because I'm sure we're all thinking, okay, why is the community college interested in this? Several years ago, I was on the Apply Texas committee, and this was something that was discussed heavily because it was fairly, the Apply Texas application in general was new to community colleges, and we wanted to investigate the opportunity of using the scholarship application, the scholarship module of the application. In our foundation at NCTC office approached me to determine if there would be a possibility to feed it into our system. That way students aren't being directed to multiple places. The problem, or at least feedback that I know I've received recently from community colleges and from our institution, is that every semester the student would be required to fill out an scholarship application, and what that would require the student to do, since it is a part of the actual application, would require them to fill out a new application, which we don't want them to do. So that's where we're trying to determine how do we need to change this, or what is the recommendation? And if we were to do that, would the institutions, because we don't want the Apply Texas team to, in this committee, to also make a lot of changes and then the institution still not use it. So that's kind of what we've been determining or trying to determine.
Sure.
And I guess I was just trying to address that if dollars are going to be assigned to a student, then I would want that student to have a fair shake. And I don't think in two little lines or one sentence, because it equals one sentence, that they could fairly represent even their major or their educational goal. I just don't feel. And, you know, they go, bam, it cut me off. I got to start again. Because, you know, they'll have this great thought, ma'am, I got to go back. Help me, ma'am, help me. Like, what do I cut? What do I, like, and I'm there trying to help them figure it out to put their life in one sentence. It just, and so that's the only problem I see it all the time.
Is more space any kind of an issue? Is this a major or minor thing that we're talking about?
I would say it's moderate because I think the way we're set up, adding a couple more lines is not, on the technical side, that difficult. It's just that, as you said, we're moving a lot more data around, and we would need to make sure that we would need to test that out in our systems because there are limits on how much data you can move easily from one place to another. You can do it, but sometimes you have to go back, get part of it, and go back and get the rest of it. And, of course, putting it in the EDI and having the SISs consume it and be able to do that is something, as Melinda says, we would need to investigate and make sure that we wouldn't want to just do this without alerting although there's a minimum number of users that we're going to be sending you this much more data than we sent before. Can you handle it?
Well, do all the students who complete this scholarship module also have to complete other scholarship forms in order to get scholarships?
Depending on the institution.
Yeah, depends on the institution.
They have to do additional essays depending on the institution.
Letters of recommendation.
Essays, but not additional forms, no. I mean, if they fill out the module, then they will be considered for scholarships, and there are a number of scholarships that's sufficient. That's all you need.
Okay.
And there was also discussion because we were trying to determine, okay, is this even going to be feasible as far as combining, you know, because of the space involved in the back end of Applied Texas. And we did discuss as a group of possibly combining some of the similar questions. Why did you choose this institution, or why did you choose this major possibly? Or the primary one that we did discuss is combining the educational plans and life goals. It would increase those two sections right now. Educational plans are 2 lines at 80 characters, and then life goals are 3 lines at 80 characters. So that may be something as far as a compromise in this, if we could look into that. But our recommendation, because we have been, at least from what I think the perspective, and we were trying to determine, okay, how can we take action on something that would benefit those that are using the application, rather than focusing on having a separate module, which I think that's what we've been determining is what would truly benefit the student. And if it's possible to actually, the action item that we'd like to take forward is increasing the number of lines for those sections as just for consideration.
Thank you. If we could move on to the counselor suite, reporting on that. Brian?
Good morning.
Brian.
We met yesterday as a committee. We didn't have a subcommittee group like we previously had, but there were a couple of items talked about on yesterday regarding the counselor suite. In summary, the committee agreed that we could use some help in promoting the counselor suite to as many counselors as possible throughout Texas. There were several ways we could do that, contacting various associations in Texas, especially those that deal with K through 12 counselors, to determine if a presentation or a booth could be set up at statewide or regional conferences, workshops, where we could better address the benefits of the counselor suite, the how to use the counselor suite, et cetera. We also talked about having the availability for colleges and universities to create a demo of fictitious data that we could share at counselor updates, that we could share throughout Texas, so we could employ the colleges and universities to help promote the use of the counselor suite to as many counselors as possible. Ms. Janis talked about her experience in Brownsville working with about 10 high schools and some of the challenges she's having with getting counselors access to the information, the types of access that they need, because some of them are now dealing with 8th graders and 9th graders. So now as more students get into the pipeline, the need for certain types of counselors to have certain type of access, and then with the inclusion of FAFSA information, how secure and how appropriate that access would be given based on federal guidelines and coordinating board rules and policies. So that would be addressed when we work with the Applied Texas technical team to promote the data and provide it on the website. So there were a couple of action items that, as a group, we plan to recommend to Applied Texas and to the coordinating board, and they including working with the Applied Texas technical team to provide a PowerPoint of such that would give instructions, step-by-step instructions to counselors, perhaps a brand new counselor or an advised Texas counselor or someone who's working with students, to how to access the information, and then what to expect as a result of accessing the Applied Texas Counselor Suite, perhaps a sample report or a filter report that would show some of the fields that a counselor would have access to better help their students in completing the application all the way through. And then working with the coordinating board to identify opportunities to attend statewide and regional-wide conferences and workshops to provide training to counselors on the uses of the Applied Texas Counselor Suite. We will have an update on these recommendations at our next meeting.
Brian, can I comment a little bit? Just a few things. I actually came up with my averages or my percentages for my school by being able to use the Counselor Suite. Hanna is at 82%. That's our largest school. Lopez is at 100%. Pace is at 100%. Porter is at 68%. Rivera is at 95%. Veterans is at 77%. Our early Brownsville, well, all of them are early college high school, but this is the one that is linked to the University of Texas at Brownsville, or UTRGV. They're at 98%. And the other schools that we have, the other high schools, because they're, for example, Lincoln Park is for our girls that are pregnant, so they really belong to their home school. The same for BLA, which is an accelerated high school that you can get out faster if you have some circumstances. And of course, BAC, which is our boot camp. But I was able to determine that by going into the Counselor Suite and seeing who has applied, who has not applied. And ironically, this is why it's so important, why the work of this advisory that might be disbanded. I don't understand, it's not very clear to me right now, but that the voice of the students, because where I have 68%, that is the area that is probably our poorest area. It's called Southmost. Most of them are first generation. And so I know I'm going to have to go in there with an action plan. What is it that I'm going to do? Because I will be called by the assistant superintendent that all of our schools will be the same, that we provide the same equal service and access to all of our kids. They have that right. So I know when I get back, I'm going to have to come up, what do I need to do? But the Applied Texas is that first step in accessing a post-secondary education. And for us in our district, it's not like, okay, everyone's going to go to college, everyone's going to go to a Harvard or Yale, a UT or A&M. It's the bottom half of the class that we worry that they would access a junior college, that they would go to a certificate program, that they would be prepared for the world of work. And so, I cannot emphasize how important this tool is if it were to be used. Then, because I can go back now and I can tell you at that school who I need to target. I already know who are the ones who are that percentage, not the 68%, but the ones that haven't. And so we need to call them in. What do we need to do? Do we need to take you through the Applied Texas step by step? What is it that we need to do? Mm-hmm. But that we can do that. And the same is going to happen when the FAFSA, because I will have to run those numbers. I will have to come up with an action plan with the principal. How are we going to do it? The other thing I was going to comment on Applied Texas is that I wrote down the little steps, how to be able to run a report, because to actually view it, the Counselor Suite is not a difficult thing. All of our counselors have access for their campus. What is difficult and probably daunting is how can they use this Counselor Suite? which is, it's right now, and I know I had shared this with Tim, that there are several steps that I have to do to be able to generate and filter this, to be able to look at it. And that's because another department, our assessment department and our techs showed me what to do, but maybe the other counselors wouldn't have someone to tell them, well, do this. And I know that when Jose was here, he had offered, okay, well, we can in service the counselors on how to, how to use the tool, how to draw the data, because the data drives your action. Your action drives your results. And so I think it's very, very important that maybe we can simplify this. That's just a request I have on behalf of the students and on behalf of the counselors that I serve. That's all.
I think I can reassure you there's no intention to discontinue Apply Texas or the counselor suite. We're talking about changes in process, not elimination of these kinds of tools, because we understand the importance of them.
Okay. I guess because I came in late yesterday because driving from all the traffic, and then I was hearing members and hearing conversations of disbanding, and so I was just trying to, I missed the first part, so I don't exactly know. I was just catching bits and pieces, and I've been here 14 years, so it's, I'm trying to capture bits and pieces and putting it together like we're going to be as needed. I don't understand that concept.
So do you want me to talk about that further? I at least want to address your counselor piece. The commissioner and David Gardner, our deputy commissioner, has already allowed us to put funds aside to support training counselors around the counselor suite, around the data that it's able to do. So we've already put money aside to start to try to figure out, and we're going to be working with P16 councils across the state to kind of figure out who, along with the region service centers, to kind of figure out how we're going to get our hands around the counselors, and even the counselor association. We'll be working with them also. So that's already in the works. So would you like me to, you want me to revisit or talk separately?
Well, you don't have to recap it. I just heard bits and pieces. I apologize, but I was fighting the traffic as I drive in. And so
overall, just we are going to redesign how this committee, the scope, as well as possibly the membership, but definitely timing of how many meetings and so forth. But the biggest point I wanted to bring in yesterday was just brought more attention to it. We can't do our job around Apply Texas and make it a good app without all of your input. Just can't do it, and don't want to do it. So what we're going to do is have to redesign it over the next couple of months, but there's still going to be some form or fashion where this committee is meeting and discussing and getting input, because we can't make the decisions, not only without you all, but I know a lot of your colleagues who aren't here, you talk to in the field, and we need that input also. So there will be a way to give that advice to us so we can actually take some of the other steps. The point I really want to get to you all, so you all notice some things aren't even to the level of going to a negotiated rulemaking, which make a big deal in the day-to-day operations of Applied Texas. So that's an example of right there why you cannot completely change the way we're doing things, because we have to have that information to keep it running well. And then there are some things like the nursing app, which would go to a negotiated rulemaking, and that's a prime example of how these things can work together.
Well, the thing is that when I have, like I said, I have been here quite a number of years, and so my role is to bring the concern of a student, to bring the concern of the counselors. I am the lead high school counselor and the higher ed counselor for the district. And so I see this. I go to labs, I work with students, and I don't know how negotiating, and again, I don't understand the concept because I just heard pieces, but how if we have a concern that the students have, or they have, how that can be negotiated, that doesn't fall in the realm of a negotiation. And I know that all of the people here, they also, they work with it on their side and what will work for them. Then I guess I'm on the other side, how it works for the student or the obstacles that they encounter, because it is our duty as educators to remove the obstacles and any barriers that would cause that we wouldn't have 100% of our kids wanting to get a post-secondary opportunity to be prepared for the world of work, to be able to make a decent living, whether it is being an air-conditioned technician or whether it's being a university professor. But, and so So that's how I guess I couldn't understand yesterday how some of the concerns I bring would go to a negotiating and not to someone that, would be able to see the other side, because the people that serve here, they're at the other side. They catch our kids. We entrust them to them. And so
the coordinating board shares your same thoughts and concerns about students having access. The negotiated rulemaking board, however that's formed, and I know Dr. Smith talked about it yesterday, it's probably going to be many of you or whoever your presidents decide also. So it's not going to be necessarily people who aren't looking at things the same way you just mentioned. But there are certain things that are more for this sort of advisory recommendation board versus the way the legislature saw the negotiated rulemaking. And I'd gladly speak to you at break to kind of get to the specifics of it, but some of your concerns about what comes up from schools and students will still be held in some form or fashion like this and will still come to us in a manner to be able to correct immediately.
Janis, I had a couple of questions for you based on what Ms. Janis, on what you had shared. Are you unique in being able to pull that kind of data, or is there someone like you in every district in Texas that can share that?
Well, for example, in our district, the counselors are able to pull their own report for their school. They have their school access, and on the campus, it's whoever the principal told me. Because I'm really I don't want teachers to have this kind of access and be looking at this kind of data because of, again, FERPA.
But wouldn't it just be summary data, though?
But I have district access because I have to prepare as the college counselor for the district. I prepare data on FAFSA. This year I've been given the task not only because I do a spreadsheet that gets not only sent to all the schools and all the principals and all the assistant superintendents that we have, but it also goes to our website and it's also published because it is a shining star if we can get that many kids or that many FAFSAs, because that's not the average of the state. What I talked about in the financial aid. And so I work at it at a district access, but a lot of the districts, some of them have financial aid counselors. I know up the valley, they have financial aid counselors that they help the students. We have now a transitional counselor in every high school because we have all early college high schools. So they do college things. We are blessed that the coordinating board has provided Advice Texas college advisors. We are blessed to have 5 of them in our school. We have more than that, and everybody would die to have one. They are the most, I've invited them to come and as guests. They are probably the most hardest working. I mean, because I supervise them. So I have, I cannot boast enough. Those kids work till 8 o'clock at night. They're there and they're not paying them those hours. They travel they're just, wow. I'm amazed they know them sometimes better than the senior counselor. And then we have the AmeriCorps Mentors, which is, again, a program through the University of Texas at Brownsville. So we have a lot of entities. We're very, very lucky, but not every district has that. Yet our district is unique. We are the largest district in South Texas. We are 95% economically disadvantaged. And so to get these numbers, and of course what we're trying to address is the summer melt. That always concerns us because we provide the services. We can show that we provide services. I'm about to go all over the place doing FAFSA form fill out in the day to every school. They pull out all the seniors for me in different, sessions. I do a worksheet. I invite them to come back. I open computer labs in the evening. I am the first person that every parent must go through. I filter. I do not want a parent to sit there 2 hours and then we tell them, oh, you haven't done your income tax. Come to the next financial aid night, because I do one at every high school, a completion night. So again, we work together as a team. I don't want to say that I'm the person that does it, but I'm responsible to be in charge of making sure everything falls in place, that we give our students every opportunity. But that this tool is irreplaceable to use is without a doubt, because I am proof that you can use it and you can match it up against your student directory and you know who to target. Otherwise, it's self-reported. Did you do that, Apply Texas? Sí, ma'am, I started it, because that's how they talk. Sí, ma'am, ya lo hice. Okay, did you finish it? Pues no sé, ma'am, I was on that page. I don't know, the page 8 or 9. Did you finish? Well, did you push the button submit? Pues, No, ma'am, I'm finished, but no, I'll go and experience. So it's, you have to literally, some of our, again, the top kids, they don't need a counselor. They're going to do it by themselves. They're self-motivated. But it's all the other ones that we want to, the Gentex or all of these, programs that we want to address all the other kids. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry. I get on the soapbox. I'm very passionate. If you don't know that by now,
Our impression is that all of the different regions have high schools that are participating in the counselor suite.
Right.
And I would imagine within each of those regions, you have most of the high schools participating in it. Now, whether they're anywhere close to the level of participation, I think the training module,
Right,
the thing that we've talked about of having a test environment where you could hands-on have them pull up data, or a college representative pull up false data just to show how it works. To me, that's one of the highest priority things that I've heard mentioned in this meeting.
Yes.
In terms of where we need to go forward, because that really, really should enable us to spread the word and help them get through demystify the process of doing that.
And Brian, the commissioner reorged our agency, part of our division, College Readiness and Success, to finally put Gentex, Applied Texas, and Advised Texas all at least under the same umbrella, so we can kind of monitor how all of them work, which is how we've come to some of these. At the same time, you are coming to it, and hopefully we can help meet those needs.
Tim, a question that I would have is, just like Pilar was able to shoot off the numbers of the high schools, percentages of those who are using it, or the students in the schools who have completed the application, would it be a challenge for a college administrator or the administrator at a college or university to be able to pull that same information?
You can't do that.
You can't.
No,
It's a FERPA violation.
The FAFSA access is limited to persons who are helping people complete the FAFSA.
But I would just be looking for statistics, percentages. At X high school, 84% have completed it. I wouldn't need to know who or what their details are, just to be able to pull a summary. Because as a high school, I could then call the high school. I mean, as a college, I could say, hey, for example, Yates High School, you've got 35% versus Lamar with 95%. I could better reach out to that high school if I had that summary data.
Jen,
not the details. I don't care about the details.
Can I address that? Because I actually had a conversation with the main person of the AmeriCorps Mentors is the financial aid coordinator for UTB. So he was helping me pull a report one day, and I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm sending this back to my email. I said, you're not going to send it. This is district information. I cannot let you take that. I'll let you look at the students that need to be, but you will not touch that, because that goes back and you're going to be able to analyze, okay, what schools. And, so that's my job to filter. However, I did find out that the director of admissions there and recruitment, he said that they could look at Applied Texas. They couldn't look at the individual things, but they could look at how many have selected their university. I want to say that they could look at it. Is that correct, Tim? And then who submitted? They can look at it, but like aggregated, I don't know.
This has two pieces. One is the application piece, and the application information goes to the institutions. They have that information. The FAFSA incentive is only for high schools, for high school access and use. It is not for college access and use.
But can the universities look at how many have used the Applied Texas by numbers, like out of Hannah High School, 300 students have applied? You can see, and who submitted?
Yes, we can through the administrative suite. We can see that.
You can see that. Okay.
You can see the number. You can't see the percentage of students in the school. You would have to figure that out, because we don't have access to how many people are in the school at the high school.
However, if you go to the website of your districts that you serve, and you go to the PEAMS, you can generate this report. See, I can go to PEAMS and I can pull out every week they have to do a report, and so that's why I highlighted. These are the numbers for Hannah, for Porter, for Pace, for all of our high schools. But you can go to, because that's public information on the numbers of students, and you could figure out your own percentages, that you are at 49% at Hannah High School, that have selected your school. So, because that has to be public information. It's under the PEAMS, and it's called Student Information Data.
We also, I think coordinating board has that data listed by high school, what school, and it even shows them what schools are going to from the previous year. So I can try to get that link to you so you can see so-and-so high school in Round Rock breaks down where each kid went or each student went, so you can kind of see who's filling out what. So I'll give you what I can.
Thank you.
I think we all agree that a test environment is the healthiest way for us to be able to help and spread the good word about a good counselor suite. But in the meantime, until that can be done, if I'm correct, Pilar, you held up some instructions on how to build the reports. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could maybe we add that to next to the PowerPoint that's already on the web, so that they can have a little more depth of knowledge, and again, not for us to perform, but for the counselors.
And I guess I want to ask Tim, because this is just, the text, I have a tech assigned to me in the district that, that's how he showed me. Charlie said, well, this one might be the best in assessment, but you might come up with a shortcut than what I did. I was just guessing, because there are no instructions on how to pull the data. So I was at first I was really intimidated, and I thought myself, my God, I have degrees, but I can't figure this out. It was daunting. And so I had to actually get someone, can you show me how I could do this? So
Could some queries be created that an institution or a school district could use to generate data or pull data from the database, as opposed to having to go through the steps? If we had the model of the ideal report for an institute or for a school, is there some way they could just enter their school code and hit press and voila?
Well, you have to filter by some things because now everyone's using the Applied Texas. You got freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Well, and we're going to have to design what that ideal.
Okay.
What everyone might
Those
like
fields,
to use.
right.
The 2 or 3 or I agree we can't come up with all of the things, but if there is 1 or 2 report
Like CAN reports.
that would be extremely helpful for everybody, and have it to where they can enter their code and get that information, because it is formatted the same for all. If that could be, those kinds of regular reports could be easily accessed by the schools, it could be great. And I don't have any sense of how difficult that might be.
I just wouldn't want us to take away the ability that they have now.
Oh, no,
Okay.
absolutely not. This is simply a shortcut for those who need that data and are intimidated and don't have the time to go find the IT folk.
Well, the first time that I saw, because when you added Tim at the bottom, download the data. I think that's what the last little icon says. And so I was all excited. I said, I can download it all. So I pushed the little magic button, and I had because it'll give every application of every student. So if I do Hannah High School that has 700 seniors, I'm going to have 700 and oh my God, the printer wouldn't stop. So, and I just thought I was going to print what I need, because it has just the one name, and then in the application listing, you see all they've applied, but it gave me everything. So
I printed a statewide report, and it turned out that it was 84 pages long. Thankfully, I stopped it before I got that far, but I was amazed at the amount of data that's in there, obviously.
Okay. Did you have a comment in the back?
There are 2 different.
okay. Mm-hmm.
The other download.
Okay, so if I do the one you put in the left-hand corner, that's different, because the techs weren't able to figure that one out.
What's on the page?
But that's one page. But if I want to do all of it, I want to download that'll download the entire class? If I hit the one on the side? It should. Because I know we tried it, and the best one was to do the bottom one and then filter the information that I needed, the seniors, and submit it. That's what I'm looking at. Give me seniors who've pushed the magic button. That's what I'm looking for. So that's the most important.
That may be the one to need the most.
Yeah, that's the one you need the most.
Brian, thank you, and your group for your report, and thank you, Pilar, for your comments, too. And we'll move on to the annual Apply Texas workshop and have Margaret give us an update on that.
Hi, good morning, everyone. We also did not meet as a subcommittee, but rather we met as the entire Apply Texas Advisory Committee to discuss the upcoming Apply Texas workshop. The date is going to be Friday, June the 12th, and it will be held at the Pickle Center. It was discussed that it would be a one-day workshop held in conjunction with the Speedy workshop, and we've already spoken to that group and have already identified that there are some sessions that have been duplicated in the past at both of the workshops, so we will be meeting to discuss those workshops, making sure that we do not duplicate anything unnecessarily. It was also agreed that we would follow last year's schedule and coordinate that with the people coordinating the Speedy workshop in order to make it a worthwhile conference. We may be adding an additional session, one that Jane Caldwell brought up yesterday, concerning maybe some best practices or maybe something we've learned this past year, but we'll be looking into that further. Michelle Walker, Elizabeth Garza, Sean Cargo, and I will meet at a later date to discuss and finalize some of the details, and then we'll bring that back to the next meeting. I believe that's all that was discussed yesterday. Is there anything else we need to add?
Thank you. Okay. I think it's everyone's happy to hear a target date, and we can start putting it in our calendars.
Start planning.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have the last committee report is the general Apply Texas application. I think Melissa's going to report on that.
Again, we did not meet as a subcommittee, but as an entire committee, and I thank all of you because I think we got a lot of great input from different areas that we might have missed otherwise, and we were able to remove some of our recommendations and let other committees handle those, so it helped us a lot. When we met last year, we had a long list, and we have eliminated it and drawn it down to just a few. Our first request is our major request, of course, and it has to do with sessions within semesters, and we found yesterday that there are many of us who are having sessions within semesters, and instead of building some new functionality or using new tools, we are requesting that we repurpose the admission deadline function that was put in last year to be able to handle both admission deadlines for our private institutions and more session dates for those of us who are having issues with multiple sessions within semesters. And within that, we wanted to customize, make the text customizable. Currently, it lists different types of admission deadlines, but if we could customize that to our own wording. And then we talked about schools being able to choose to use enforced or displayed deadlines through that functionality. And then we would like to add this across all application types, because currently I believe it is only on the four-year undergrad, if I'm correct on that. And we spoke with Tim and the Apply Texas team in talking about this. We do know it's a major project, but it seemed like it was something that was doable this year. We have another major request that we have not tabled altogether, but we ask that we investigate it, and we've particularly asked him and the Apply Texas team to help us investigate it. And Michelle Walker volunteered to offer assistance and bring others in if or when needed, and that is to look at concentrations for undergraduate students. It's an issue that is changing over time, and the need is really there. We're all handling it through some form of customization now, and if we could bring it to more of a standard that students would see across all of our institutions, we thought that would be better. It is a major project. We're not asking that we fix that this year, but we are asking to start the discussion and look into the feasibility of it. One of the things we do request this year is the additional visa types for not only the international application but also the 2-year application. This portion of the application hasn't been updated in several years, and there are some visa types that are not listed. Melinda Carroll is going to supply those types to Tim and the team. Another request was to add 2 previous high schools, and to actually request for 3 high schools total, but 2 of those be previous high schools, 1 being current high school, and to add the dates enrolled, the date of enrollment or date of attendance for each of those, just as we do for previous colleges. More and more we see students taking non-traditional routes, or our society is very mobile and students are attending 2 and 3 different institutions. And if they tell us that up front, we know what to ask them for, instead of too late after a deadline or when it's too late to get that information in time for enrollment during the semester that they choose to enroll. So that would really be the addition of previous high school and adding the dates to all of those.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
For background, I went to 8 elementary schools and 5 high schools, so I'm one of your poster children for this issue. But what is the value of why do you need the prior high school?
Because quite often we get a student may move in the middle of the application process. A student may have just moved and not listed what they've done in the past, and we get a transcript that shows one thing and we realize this other work is somewhere else, and I'm going to let my fellow people chime in on their issues that they've had with it's knowledge for us to know what to ask the student for, because immediately I believe all of us send out some kind of missing information or information needed communication to the student. In fact, we send it out that night that says we received your application and these are the things we need. But if that checklist is not complete, we don't ask for it in advance, and then we only ask for it when we get a transcript from somewhere else that tells us something.
So the issue is an incomplete transcript, basically?
Yes, we often get, like we may get a transcript with one year's worth of courses, and we have no idea what other transcript to ask that student for. And we don't, with our volume, we do not have the staff to email that student directly, to follow up one by one. We post on a checklist what's required. So if they had given us previous schools attended, we could at least note those and display those as potential transcripts we may need. Otherwise, we're showing them unknown high school on our checklist, and then they have no idea what to do.
So that has a direct impact on whether you can enroll them or not?
Yes, correct, because when we ask for one transcript or a high school transcript and we get that, and that may happen a week later, it may happen a month later, then we say, oh no, well, guess what, we need more information from you. And so it's really delaying their admission decision.
We don't complete the file until we have 6 semesters of coursework at a minimum. I mean, we have to have their freshman, sophomore, junior year.
Is that noted somewhere for them? In other words, if I'm filling out this form, is there an indication that you must provide at least 6 semesters of high school?
Yes. But they don't always know what, they go to the high school and they request a transcript. They don't know what that school is going to post on their transcript. They haven't seen the transcript. Often that transcript is coming to us directly from the counseling office or the registrar's office. So if some schools will post on their transcript previous credits, some will not. Some will give us a ranking for a student, some will not. For us, we have to have the ranking, and if it's a ranking school, that student remains incomplete until either they contact us and say, look, I can't get a ranking, I'm new at this school, And we just don't have the manpower to follow up on every instance like that. So,
And Jane, we do notify what the requirements are, most of us, on our website and through those
Right.
materials,
Yeah.
but it's not listed on the application, and that's the issue because they're not connecting all of it. So
Yeah.
by allowing them to list all of it, it's going to notify us so that then we can provide better service to the students and speed up the process for them, because ultimately it's making a delay in their admission decision.
Okay. And what percent of the I'm sure it's a growing percentage just because of the
It is growing.
increasing.
I couldn't tell you the percentage now, but it is.
if I had to guess, I would say potentially 30%. A third of the class have attended more than one high school.
Okay.
And you also have the situation where different school districts consider ninth grade part of the middle school, and some consider it part of the high school. And so just having some idea of where they've attended, what they've done, it's very helpful to us.
Just a better profile of the student, too.
Right, right.
Regarding transcripts, in the state, I don't think that BISD is the only one, but TREX is still not being utilized to the capacity. It has its flaws, I know, in our district, because it changes some of the grades, or some of the grades disappear. So consequently, they go to manually sending transcripts. I'm sure we're not the only district that does that. We're working on fixing this, because there's no way that we can be in this age of technology and still sending paper transcripts. And what happens when they send a paper transcript, thus you're incomplete, is that the only person that can put the rank and GPA, if they have to write it in, is the counselor. Because we have records room, and the records person in charge of that is the one that generates the transcript. And TREX, they can use it within schools, they can use it to other school districts, they don't have a problem, but with the institutions of higher education, we're having a problem, which I know we're trying to correct. But that's what happens, and if they don't find the counselor, then they just mail the transcript like that, and it's incomplete.
We recently had a situation come up where a student had enrolled at a two-year institution and apparently later provided the transcript, and the transcript was determined to be at an unaccredited high school. And there were issues about the student losing financial aid and some other things like that. Do many institutions, do two-year colleges often enroll students prior to getting the transcript, just because they don't have the data, the information available at the time they're enrolling? Is that not an unusual thing?
No, it's
Okay.
6 semester.
One semester.
Okay, and they're to provide the transcript by the end of the first term?
Yes.
Okay.
See, at Texarkana College, we kind of stopped that. So we allow them to be pre-advised, but prior to us dispersing the aid, we have to have the final high school transcript in.
Okay, so you require it before the fall term begins?
Correct.
Okay.
But that's just what we do.
Right, for admissions purposes, we do give them a semester grace period, but we don't disperse until that final transcript has been
So financial
submitted.
aid is
For
held
financial
up.
aid, it does
Okay,
stop
but
it.
admissions is allowed?
Yes.
prior. Okay.
But at A&M, financial aid will be dispersed for one semester. They have until the end of the first semester to get that transcript to
Is that
us.
true for most
Same with us.
universities?
Yes.
Okay.
Same here.
But the community colleges, by the end of the first semester? Okay. Just learning more all the time. Thank you. Okay.
And just to follow up, because of the TREX issues, we are finding a lot of us are spending many man-hours with PDF transcripts that are being sent by other services, because the schools do not have the IT support to deal with the TREX issues and the problems that come up through it. And those problems are mounting and growing, because if you know a PDF transcript that has to be opened one at a time, one email at a time, with a secret code that expires in 24 hours after you've opened the email. And so we can have one person doing that, but it's very slow to the process.
Well, so sidebar, is TREX something we should be continuing to pursue?
And
Absolutely.
enhance.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it was made mandatory, I believe, at one point.
Was.
And but it's never grown to the perfection that is needed. And on the high school end, evidently there is a lot of technical issue and support that needs to happen for them to send. And so they've chosen to use other vendors.
Yeah.
And you know, I understand on the sending end that's very easy, but it is very complicated on the receiving end.
Okay. I need a whole T-Rex
Exactly.
education.
That's a sidebar.
Now is not the time, so we'll do that elsewhere. Thank you very much.
The next is a request for expanded name fields, first, middle, and last across all application types. But I know the grad committee has recommended that, and so we will let them stand with that as their recommendation. We totally support it. And next, I think we talked about receiving files in different ways and if CSV versus EDI and different things. And what we decided was that Tim and his team would talk to the National Clearinghouse about the possibility of individual institutions contracting with the clearinghouse in order to handle their own needs, and not be a part of the committee or our decision, unless it came to the point that there was a lot of technical work that wouldn't be needed on the Applied Texas end.
I'm sorry if I can interrupt. The recommendation from the graduate application subcommittee was to increase the name size for, I believe, just the graduate application. No? For all? For all. Okay. I thought that was...
It did come out of that committee, but that was one of my questions, but I assumed it would be for everything. But
okay. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
And the next issue is a growing issue, and I certainly involves the technical team all along the way, but it's really the work of the committee, and we've talked about, we've been requested to create a new shortened readmit app or revise this app, and we decided that we really need to look at every one of our applications and revisit everything that we ask, because as we discovered yesterday that times are changing and things are changing since the inception of the app, and we've added a lot along the way because we needed it with our new technologies or the new ways that we do business, but we have not gone back and looked at the app to see what is old and why are we asking it just because we've always asked it. And so in light of the need or the request for a shortened readmit app and a shortened 2-year app, we would like to do the work or create a working group to do the work across all application types. And we would do that certainly within with the Applied Texas committee and team, but that's a big project, and it needs a specific assignment of a working group to look at this, poll our users, and find out what, as we identify things, find out who's using it and if they really need it, and if that's the majority or one or two, or have we all just really left it there because it was always there. And so we would like to recommend that a working group be formed to look at each application type and review each question and each module and determine if some of it's outdated and unnecessary.
Yay!
I thought you would like that, Jane. And I don't know. Do we ask for volunteers to do that, or would you like to appoint that, or?
I would,
probably has to be.
I think it would have to be volunteers. Everyone is so busy. It would be nice to have the committee suggest the makeup of such a work group, and then we go out and ask for volunteers to try to get that representation.
Right.
And maybe that's something that we do in our next meeting.
Absolutely. Okay. We will bring that plan to the next meeting. How's that?
That would be good. That'd give us something to react to.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Well, thank you. I think we've gone through all the committees, and I want to thank everyone for doing such great work yesterday and really beforehand. I know some of you sent out surveys and have been contacting others on the phone, so we do appreciate all the work that it's taken just to get here. Next on our agenda is Tim giving us an assessment of what we've requested, but I thought this would be a good time to take a 10-minute break. And Tim, we give you 10 minutes to figure it all out while we're on break. But we'll just take a short 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and get some assessment from Tim and his team about what his thoughts are about our projects. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very good.
Let him give us some feedback and some direction on how he would like us to respond to him.
Okay, thank you. The order I have, so if you don't mind going in this order, is that we'll start with the grad app, and what I have, and I pushed the name length over to the general just because it seemed that way I don't get confused, and it's a major priority for me, not being confused. So, so when we look at these, then you've already given us some good direction of an order. I see the pick list, some wording, a word change on ultimate degree, which I guess you're going to give us that. Somebody will give us that. Adding organization to the references. Adding organization to the references for grad and international. And then I think other than the name change and the investigation we're going to do about files, sending them separately and these kinds of things with the NSC, those were the main ones. And so I don't think we need an you already gave us a 1, 2, and a 3 there, but I don't really see that there's anything on this we need help with in terms of prioritization. The point of prioritization for the team is to tell us what you want us to do first and to spend most of our effort on. And the corollary to that, which no one wants to say, is that means other things might not be gotten to. I graduated from college too. I can see begotten too. So the point of when I ask you to prioritize things, it's kind of like, okay, what if we had to drop one, which would it be? Which is a more pointed way of saying something like that. But I think if we push a couple of these, they withdrew some things, postponed some things. And pushing the name size change over to another subcommittee, I don't think we need to worry about any of these things that have been presented. And you've already given us a little order anyway, but so I don't think we need you to tell us, you've already told us some things we don't need to do, so I think we're fine.
What about the recommendation? I'm just seeing it that we changed the wording on the other names and aliases.
That's going to be, actually, that was something, that was on a list of things that I was going to ask for clarification on, although I don't know that I needed it until later on. But now that you brought it up, let's go ahead and go to it. Michelle, I guess, had asked for a minimal changing of the wording on the, I lost it, of the wording on the other names and aliases, where it currently says, if you attended school using a different name or took a standardized college entrance exam using a different name, please list it or them. And they want to change it to, if you attended school using a different name or took a standardized college entrance exam using a different name, that's all the same. And then adding the parenthetical, especially the GRE, which requires a surname, please list all name variations below. Failure to do so could create duplicate records at the receiving institution, parenthetical, which may result in processing delays. So really, basically, they're just firming it up to specifically mention the GRE because it requires a name that some of the others don't require, and so you might put it there and not put it somewhere else, and then matching becomes a problem. And then also a request to just beef it up and say, we really need you to do this if you did use another name. So that's, I guess the question would be, do we want that? What apps would we want that on? Is that for everybody? Or is that other names and aliases? That's just a general question.
The wording would not be appropriate for an undergraduate application because of the reference to the GRE.
Well, because it's a parenthetical, I think it would be okay on an undergrad.
My only request would be that we say previous institutions or previous schools and make that plural, particularly with graduate students who are, and particularly in the education field, who are coming back. They have attended multiple institutions under multiple names.
So to say if you attended previous institutions or previous schools?
Just to make it plural.
Okay. Or if you attended other schools? Okay.
If you attended other schools.
And is there a timeline that you're talking about?
What?
I mean, if you attended one school 10 years ago and one 3 years ago, do you need?
The problem becomes, especially with graduate students, as they're sending in transcripts from years and years ago, and they attended 4 or 5 different schools, which is not uncommon, that they attended each under a different name.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've done some conversing with grad students, particularly international grad students, as to why they were not putting these other names in that space on the application. And one of them said, we don't consider a GRE a credential. Now, for whatever reason, that was pretty common, and so we were having a lot of difficulty. We are having a lot of difficulty matching test scores with student names. Even undergraduate, often when the student takes a test, they're using whatever name they go by, their nickname and their last name. Well, when you have the volume that we have, a nickname, we can't match that up, and they get their date of birth wrong, or they get their address has changed, or their high school has changed. Sometimes we would use high school, but they took the test when they were sophomore, and they're at a different school as a senior. So, just trying to get them understand that this is critical information that we could use, which would speed up our processing, would be helpful.
What I'd like to suggest is, because this is a simple change of text and is easy to do on our end, it doesn't need to be prioritized, and if there's discussion about the actual wording, we could have that when we meet in the spring, and it wouldn't impact the development time from the developers. I can see that there might be need some tinkering and some back and forth on that, and there are several things like that I'm going to bring up in the spring that don't involve taking any significant time away from or significant time for the developers. So the bottom line for me is we should be able to do all these, and you've given us a little priority anyway, but so I don't need any further prioritization within that subcommittee. And for the larger committee, there's nothing in here that is a major project now that we've taken the name change away. On the scholarship app, we have to investigate lengthening the answers from 2 lines. We're assuming that's a request made by that subcommittee. It seems at this point what I got from it was that it's not a request to just go do it, but it's a request to look into it, investigate it. Someone will canvass the users. So I'm assuming someone else will do that, not the Apply Texas team.
I can email the users.
Okay.
As far as the feedback that I've received.
Okay.
And yes, it's to investigate the possibility of expanding the length of each answer.
And I guess what we need to know is if you do your investigation and find out that everyone would be cool with that, do you want us to come back and do that this cycle? And if so, that needs to be prioritized with the other things. If you're if you're willing to say, okay, we found out that's a good idea, see if you can fit it in, and if you can't, we'll kick it down the road to next year. But if you could fit it in, that would be great. But you don't. If that would be okay, then it doesn't need to be prioritized. We can just do the research and come back and see how big a deal it would be. And if we can get it in this cycle, we will. And if we can't, we won't. Okay. If you want us to really make an effort, if you find out it can be done and you really want to push for it this cycle, it needs to be prioritized by the whole group.
Well, and I'll send that out and then forward that on to you, the responses, and that way we can determine that next time. If that's what you're saying.
Yeah, except, next time is April or May. And
it doesn't happen this year. It just,
okay,
I would like to get feedback from the users from the institutions that are actually utilizing the application to determine if they are using that. Kind of our second bullet point at the end of our report is increasing the fields going to, how will that impact those institutions? Because if they say, no, don't change it, it's good, we certainly wouldn't want to recommend something that's going to negatively impact the institutions that are using that. Or if they're using another source for data also.
And I may be misunderstood. When you said next time, I thought you meant next time the ATAC meets, and you meant next year. Okay.
I will. I'll send an email to the users, and I'll copy you, and that way maybe you'll be included on that response.
And I think the group knows this, but just to reiterate, when we do get together in April or May, whenever the next meeting is, the final meeting for this coming spring, we won't be able to take on any projects with any meat on them. There might be minor things we can look at, but we're pretty close to being done with our development cycle at that point.
I think this would be more investigation and see for even not this coming, but the next after that.
Counselor's Suite, I think one thing I would like to ask would be, I see 3 possible requests. One is for an investigation of looking at how the downloads work and whether they need modification, whether new ones need to be added, whether the ones that are there are basically working, but we need to tinker with how they're understood and how they're used. There's another priority. There's another request which has to do with building out the test environment, and that's a moderate to major project for the team, and also to build up the FAQs and the PowerPoints and stuff like that. And so what I'd like to ask the Counselor Suite Subcommittee is, do you have a sense of any order of those, just in case we don't get all of them done this cycle? Can you give me an order where the order kind of, we're going to take a serious look at all of them, and if maybe it's a good chance we can get all of them done. So really the question is kind of, if we didn't get one done, which one could wait till next time, if any of them?
Do that because Brian's not here. I personally think that simplifying pulling the data would be first and foremost, coupled with some kind of notification to the counselors, kind of a reminder of this online tool that can help them create a college-going culture. Because sometimes the counselors live busy lives. For them to think, okay, you know what, let me go do a sample let me go do a sample run, let me read this PowerPoint to see, when they can just, it's fairly easy to find, to actually just view. It's how do I use this tool other than look at who's there. And so that's just how I think, because like you said, the other ones are going to take moderate to difficult. And so that would be very time consuming on your part versus seeing what you could tweak to simplify downloading the information. But I think it needs to be coupled with, this is a coordinating board. It's an online tool. It's basically what it is. So I think you would get double for your money. I don't know how to say it, but just being able, a 2-prong strategy to see if we can, help the counselors and help the students, because ultimately it's going to help them if the counselors, address them and say, what's up, or you need to finish your app.
Pilar, do you think that what you're saying is that this is more important than, for instance, having the test data where a college having a high school counselor night or counselor workshop could show the counselors how to use the counselor suite, that this other is more important than that?
Okay, and I'm assuming that the colleges are going to have like in-services or the regions to explain it. But really, what you do is when you go to the Applied Texas, instead of going there, you go counselor, sign in. You go once you've gotten your access from the Region 1, you just click on that, and then as long as you can just put, your name and your user, it takes you right to the school. Like mine will say select a school because I can see all of our high schools, but it's that easy. They can go right into it. That part is like super easy. The part is, what do I do by viewing this other than, okay, let me see, Juan Garcia, let me click on his app listing. Let's see, he's applied to UT, but he hasn't finished. He's applied and he's finished with UTRGV. Like, it requires so much analyzation on their part that I don't think they have the time to address that. I think the purpose, of the counselor suite was to let the counselors know where are your students applying, but ultimately is how can this help you get everybody to apply, I would think. But, you can email Brian and see what he thinks. I think, or maybe they're just as important. It's just that what can Tim do? Because he did make a mention that is moderate to difficult. So if it's going to be very time consuming, maybe the other thing would be a quick fix. And at least that's something. But I can't imagine he just fixes it and then the people don't know about it. So it's kind of it's a double strategy. That's what I think.
And that's really what this is. This is the subcommittee, and you're representing it to say, what's our priorities? And, of course, the coordinating board, this is an advisory committee to the coordinating board. So if the coordinating board, it's not that they're going to kick your requirement out, but the coordinating board can decide with us or on their own that building out the test environment really is important. We're asking you what you think, but the coordinating board also has a hand in what our time is.
Yeah, and that's fine, whatever they decide. The thing is that if you just do a test and you show the counselors, well, this is how you use it, this is available, but if they don't get the optimum, like this is what you can really do with this tool, and you haven't simplified the way to pull it. I mean, I already know how to pull my data, but if you saw the steps, it's pretty complicated. So I was just thinking, you tell them, you get them excited, but then they don't know what to do other than view it. So I don't know. It's whatever you all decide. I'm sure it's the right decision. I just needed to say that.
Okay. Well, and your point is very well taken. The question, we have a trade-off here maybe between getting people who aren't using it at all to start using it versus those who use it and help them use it to its full capacity. Right. And maybe that's Applied Texas or College Counselor Suite 1 and 2. Yeah. Two classes or two levels of sophistication. We'll be interested in Tim, what you say about what those different pieces would imply, and now I guess part of my questioning is that when we were talking about the Apply Texas getting the test environment, I was seeing a lot of people in this room nodding their head like that would be really a neat thing to have and so forth. And so whether we're trying to help the colleges help the high schools, or if we're trying to go directly to the high schools to help it, I don't have a sense of which is the more effective thing to do.
So does currently, Tim, I know that when I in-serviced the counselors, the 8th grade counselors, because they had no clue what Applied Texas was, and now they were thrusted into that world. And I just actually printed one and I gave them the copies, and then I took them and I made one and I just made up all the information, kind of like what you did, Jane. And I took them step by step, but I did a 2-year because that's what TSC was requiring for dual enrollment. So I took them through what they needed to know and told them, look, TSC doesn't need this part. So it was pretty, specific to what they needed to do. But you're right, it would help them to know that. I don't know if there's a sample. Like if you do the FAFSA, you know that you can go to the test. They have an actual test one that you can go, to the Department of Ed and you do one. And I did that in the FAFSA training I did with them. But I don't know if there's right now a test that they could just try it. No? Yes?
A test of the...
Apply Texas. Like a test form that you could...
Yeah, there's...
That's because I've never done it, so I just actually took them through one and I just put my information and we did it.
So, back to kind of Jane's point, how much of this would, in terms of educating the counselors and having them understand how the tool works, would a building out of a test site take care of at least some of that? And certainly building out a test site would also involve instructions for how to get through the test site and how to use it as a tool. I think the question of data in a download is a separate question, but in terms of having more counselors use it and having the counselors use it at a greater depth of knowledge, I think the question, if I'm not speaking for you, is that the test environment would help that quite a bit. And I think it would be implied that the other request on here to beef up the help would be a part of that development of the test environment.
It needs a marketing campaign too, some kind of information sent out to the availability of it. That's
really
important.
That would be more on the coordinating board side rather than
the
TIM side, right?
And I think with the test environment that can happen. I mean, BISD is so fortunate to have you, and I think most any school district in the state would like that. But to allow a test environment would allow all of us to market it in our regions.
Okay. From the General Apply Texas application, I want to ask a couple of things that, these are, I think, relatively minor, but there were a couple of things that came up, but I don't think they were put forward by the committee, but I want to make sure they had an opportunity to address them briefly. One is, there was talk of adding a pre-pharmacy to pre-law and pre-med, and I didn't know whether they wanted us to go ahead with that. I don't think that came out in the priorities, but we'd rather look at it now than have it asked later.
Is that a trivial thing, or is that...
Relatively, if they're talking about adding something to a drop-down that already exists, there might be some coding that would happen if someone chooses that, but that would not be a major thing at all.
That fell under the idea of concentrations, I believe.
No. This is that question. Where is that, Tim? It's a drop down that's asked kind of up by the high school information where, they ask if you're pursuing a teacher certification. Right, and then there's another question that says...
Pre-law, there's a couple things that are not real majors themselves.
No, it's just what are your intentions. So pre-pharmacy makes perfect sense with this. I mean, it seems to just kind of be left off, but it's pre-med, pre-law, pre-pharmacy. What's the other?
Maybe physical therapy.
And those are asking the team, those are just somebody does a click of a button or a checkbox, and then we just send that in the EDI as a byte. There's not any significant processing after they choose that, right? So that's easy.
You're correct. That did not make our list, but I think that's a very important thing.
It could be usable. It could be very useful to
Absolutely.
some schools, and what you do with it is up to you. I don't know if anyone uses the response to that question. I'm sure some people do, but that question could be used to grab concentrations potentially, if your concentrations include those pre-professional
Right.
school.
Just about covers all of them.
Yeah, that's what we were doing was,
Pre-vet, pre-med,
right.
Physical therapy,
Right.
I would
therapy,
say. Yeah.
law.
The other thing that I had down, I don't know that it was specifically asked for. I don't think it had to do with the other names, but maybe there was a preferred name and a legal name, and I don't know if this was a request. I think I had this down from Elizabeth, and I don't know if this was a request for a new field or a change in text.
It was a change in text that they wanted.
And I think we decided yesterday that the majority of people would not use the preferred name.
Right, that it should read legal name, right?
Correct.
So this has been withdrawn? Is that
Correct.
okay?
What does it currently say? Does it currently say preferred name? That's the impression I got, was that maybe it currly displays preferred name.
Oh, and you want the
And
other
they
one?
want it to say legal
Legal
name. Have to look at it.
Right now, it's being left alone. Right. Is that right? There may be further investigation from the team, but we're not, from the group, but we're not being asked to do anything, to change anything at this point. Is that right?
Not unless it says preferred.
Okay.
I see people typing, or people looking
Which app
at
is
it
that on?
on all of them,
Can
actually.
somebody check on that?
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably on the profile, maybe.
If it says preferred, then we
Yeah,
are
then it needs
requesting
to
it be
say
changed to legal.
We can add it that way. If it says preferred, we would
Okay, yeah.
we
And
would
if all you're
prefer
talking
that
about
it be
is-
legal.
Yeah, if that's just a label change, can we legally prefer that?
We can legally prefer that.
So if you're just talking about a name, whatever it is, then if
We would
it's-
like for it to say legal name.
Okay, thank you. That was very succinct. I like that.
Question, on your graduate international, do you call for passport name or something like that?
We call for it, but it doesn't fit
I believe there's
currently.
some messaging on there
Okay.
that does tell them that we would like them to put their passport name.
Okay, space availability dependent.
Correct. That is an issue.
Okay.
Okay, I think those are the two that I thought that I wanted to mention. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit. I think this is going to be. I think this is going to be a request to be looked at further. But there was a talk about this shortened 2-year readmit. Is that for all? I think it was all. Somebody was saying it may be in all app types too. But that was also. I guess my question. Is, are we also looking at the creation of a new app, a readmit app for the 2-year school, or are we looking at just simplifying the apps that are already out there?
I think at this time we're talking about simplifying the apps that are out there.
And I would
we're in
imagine this is not
investigation on
something that would be impacting what you're doing.
No.
Because it's
Right.
going to be a study to come
Until
up with
later,
their findings,
yes.
and it will be a later
Right.
action item.
And that will be
We'll be doing
across all app
investigation
types.
before we bring an action item to you.
Okay.
And on the name, it currently says full legal name,
Oh, good.
not preferred.
Do we withdraw that?
Yeah.
Well, we may want to look at the profile.
That's what I'm looking
You're looking at the profile?
Yes.
What about,
Full legal name required.
okay.
This may be what needs. There's, for each section, it says last name or family name or surname, first name or given name, middle name, and then suffix. For each space.
Okay. So it already says legal name. We
Yes.
don't need us to do anything. Okay. And there was a request then to add 2 previous high schools, so there would be 3. Is that 3 sets of fields for previous high schools? And there was a field to add the dates attended, right, to
Correct.
each of those, which I guess might be 2 fields?
Correct. And I think it was 2 previous high schools and then 1 current high school.
Oh, okay.
So a total of 3.
And the dates would be just as the previous colleges.
Okay. Okay, and then we have the visa choices for all applications, and that's minimal. And then we have the changing the name fields for all apps. The concentrations, which I understand we're going to investigate, but at this point, we're not being we're not being asked absolutely to do it.
Right.
Okay. Right. And then there's the multiple sessions, which we are being asked to do.
That's our major project.
So the only thing, if you can do this, I don't know whether you can. If it came to it between the changing the name fields and the multiple sessions, and you had to choose one, what would it be? Dum, dum, dum.
I know mine, but I don't think it will coincide with everyone else's. I would prefer the sessions, but I would think the struggle with the names may precede that.
I think at UT Arlington, we already have a process in place, though it's not perfect. It doesn't give us the ability to enforce deadlines, which that modification would do. I think the biggest struggle that we do have currently is the names. It's a lot of manual work on our, especially our graduate staff processing those international, to actually go in and retype their name after we get their passport. That would make the biggest difference to our institution right now.
Yeah, I think
I agree.
I have to agree with that because of the manual work involved when you create 2 records and 3 and 4.
And I'm not saying that as an excuse so that we can say, oh, we don't have to look at that. This is just, if push comes to shove, and we want to know which one, if we can know which one is the more important.
I think we would name the name fields as the most important, but a close second is the other.
Greater impact. It has greater impact.
Has greater widespread
not necessarily
impact.
important.
And the only other one, the request in here that is a current request that would take some work would be adding the previous 2 high schools, because it's a bunch of different fields. Would you put it third? I don't think we're going to have trouble.
Yes.
I don't think we'll have trouble getting to that, but it's since it is more than a trivial request.
Is it a moderate? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
But if you could do the multiple terms and you had to drop the previous high schools, that would be okay. That would be what we would prefer.
Okay. And to follow up on the name, changing name fields, we're going to do some investigation as far as how much you want them changed. There are the SISs need to be the schools need to be contacted about what they could handle, and so we need to figure that out as to how big is how much is a reasonable increase that would take care of the problem as much as possible, and but also not put too much of a burden on the institutions for their changes.
I did investigate the banner, and it accommodates 60 characters per name, so I think we're covered there.
And that's what we're all doing, is going back and adding all that manually.
Whatever ERP you've got for your student, and find out.
I sent it to you.
Thank you.
Was it mentioned that the 35 was something with Social Security or something?
I think Social Security is 36, which is maybe a reasonable, I don't know how much they get a problem with 36, but that might be a reasonable approach. And I don't know whether, I would guess the first names, we could ask you and UT and any other school that has a lot of international students, how much do you have to add? UTA, UT Arlington, what's reasonable? If we added 5, 10, if we said 36 for all of them, 30 for all of them, if there's a way for you to tell, there may be somebody that's got a 75-byte name and we're just not going to be able to accommodate that one. But if we went from 12 to 20 or to 25 or to 30, would that take care of 99% of your cases?
I think one thing we need to also research is how many spaces they have in CVIS, what goes on their I-20 as well. is a consideration. So I'll get with our graduate assistant director and get some information for you.
I'm glad you thought of that because I didn't.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask, how many people are impacted by the name change as opposed to the multiple session issue?
I would think any student, any university that enrolls or two-year school that enrolls international students or international students who have become citizens or permanent residents. So it's more widespread.
Okay.
I would think so. That'd be the name.
Okay, so I've got number one, the change in the name fields. Number two, the multiple sessions, and we're going to need to work with some people on that. Well, on both of those, we'll need further information. And I'm assuming after this meeting and all the decisions have been made, then I'll get together with Jane and with the co-chairs and say, who should represent, who do we talk to? And there's, we can email to the whole group and we can email to subcommittees and, who's going to decide how long the names are going to be and how do we decide that and who's going to decide how we deal with the multiple sessions?
It seems to me that the Social Security. I think if we learn the SEVIS limitations, those are great guidelines to go by. Either one of those.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be good if we could include, especially in our minutes, for the sake of the future, how that decision was made. So we're not continuing to say, okay, now add five more. But I liked what Mike said. The Social Security is it's a great standard. If SEVIS can accommodate that.
Right. And I feel like SEVIS can accommodate that, but we definitely need to check.
And the several other requests that are minor we'll just do from that group. And I think that's all. Did I mention all the groups? I think I did. So that's all I've got. And I think Jane and I had talked about how to move forward on this. I guess you want to go ahead with that? Do you want me to comment on that? Or do you want to go ahead?
No, if you want to make your comment.
Well, I was just saying that instead of, as a possibility, because of the projects that are on here, instead of the whole group prioritizing the major projects, to use maybe not the appropriate word, against each other, you could just authorize the team to move forward using the prioritizations within each subcommittee. And I think that there are not so many major projects. If we had 7 major projects that everybody said we had to get to, then we'd have to say, okay, we just need the whole group to decide, for the subcommittees, which ones are more important for the whole group. But I think that given the number of projects and given the prioritizations that we've already been handed from the subcommittees, I don't think we necessarily need to do that unless you want to.
Tim, does that mean that I'm just going to ask for an example, a little clarification. Does that mean that you could do at a minimum the number 1 of each?
That would be our approach. Would be okay. So a number 1 in one subcommittee would be higher than a number 2 from the other subcommittee.
Right.
But we would look at the number ones for every subcommittee and say these are our major ones, and we don't necessarily need to put them against each other because there aren't too many. I think that seems to be a more fair process because in previous years, the subcommittee ones that aren't the general apply texts get pushed down and they never get gotten to, if I can use that term too. So I think this is a better way that the work of all the committees, at least the number 1 of each group gets completed. I don't know if there's any other dialogue or any other thoughts on that, but this allows something to be done for every group that's been working really hard all year and taking input and not get pushed aside.
Tim, could I ask you to compile that list and send it out just to make sure, because we've talked about, and at least in my notes, I started with a 1 and now it became a 2 and then it became a 3.
Yeah.
So if you could send us the results of your 1, 2, and 3 per committee, that would be very helpful, so we'll know exactly what you're talking about.
But does anyone have any concerns with that approach this year? Do you feel comfortable with that? That might be the better way to go. It seems like the group feels that way, and Jane, I think that's a good idea. That way we kind of all have a documentation of
yeah, just
the
to
1,
make
2,
sure
and
we're
3.
all
on the same
page. Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
The other thing that I'll repeat from yesterday is that there could be additional things that the coordinating board feels need to be done that might take and compete with some of these that are on the list from the committee. And we'll also let you know those if any of them are significant. The main one in my mind is the statistics, because part of what we want to do is explain what this group is doing, and we don't have good data for doing that very well now.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think we're in the era of big data, so it's a lot about gathering data and creating the data that we might not have, and starting to gather it from now on, and then getting tools to mine the data. Jane and I have talked about this, and I think on the application side, we have probably all the data that is being asked for. We would need to improve our tools for delivering the data in a way that the coordinating board wants. In the counselor suite, depending on what kind of data you want, we might need some significant development time to add to the data that is captured. So it isn't tracked. We have minimal tracking of what the counselors do in the suite, and so there's.
Right now, my thought would be the primary, just the fairly gross statistics about. But by institution for the Applied Texas, number of applications, number of applicants per type of form that we make available, which will help us get a sense of the school participation in the programs and the use of the various forms that are out there. And then for Counselor Suite, right now you're able to you have provided me some information about the high schools that are accessing their information. It's not that I need to know what their information is, but just knowing that of the high schools, this group has on average 7 visits to Counselor Suite per month, or these kinds of things, just to get a sense of the usage or lack thereof, to help us target districts that we might need to work harder to try to get them more informed. Pilar, going back to you, for those districts that don't have a Pilar Janis, to help get the Regional Service Center, perhaps getting them more actively involved. So I think I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of new stuff that you have to do, but it's more a matter of breaking out the pieces and letting us see.
Right, and I think one of the things that you and I have talked about a little bit is where the data will be kept. We've been sending data to the coordinating board with the understanding that we would not be keeping it and providing tools for accessing it. But if that situation is changed, then there's going to be somewhat of a burden on the technical team then to say, okay, we are going to keep data around. We need to have an archiving database that can be accessed, and then build some tools for that.
And as I think I've said to you, I just simply don't know the data. I know the data warehouse exists, and I don't know what we can do with it. So I have no idea what level of issue that is. But again, if we're trying to explain what this project accomplishes, statistics are going to be very important.
Right.
And the data's there, so we just need to figure out how to pull it out and
use it.
And use
report with
it.
it.
And right now, I don't think there's anything from the counselor suite that we send to the data warehouse. So it's just the application data.
Okay.
Jane, I was going to volunteer in my spare time that if you want me to, I would imagine what you're talking about in the presentation would be a really simple PowerPoint that would explain what it is with some screenshots. I have no idea how I would do that, but I'm sure the techs in my district would. But if you want me to, I could come up with some sample PowerPoint that you can take and tweak, and then that could be coupled with the test, but it's at least a visible one that you could say this is what, and they would have to see like this is where you go first, and this is where you, just real simple and kind of like the function. So
I would appreciate that. Again, the if I get to the point where I understand it, then it would probably be good for me to do that, because I am looking at it with fresh eyes and going, oh my gosh, how does this work? And so I can go through it on a step-by-step basis that someone who knows it as well as you wouldn't realize that some of those steps might be necessary. But anything that you want to share would be appreciated. And that's true for anybody. If you have a training tool that you use for Apply Texas, I'd be interested in seeing it. One of the problems I have when I go on our website, or the Apply Texas website, is there's a lot of information, but most of it doesn't have a date. So I don't know how current it is. I don't know if it is still, if this is the version of a PowerPoint that still is relevant to the process or not. So at some point in time when we have finished with the work group for the reviewing the applications and things that are not necessary, it would be really good to do that same thing with the Q&As and the FAQs and all of that kind of stuff. Actually, from my background, a user's manual is more helpful than FAQs. I would love to have a single document that I can go to get the answers to my questions, as opposed to having to know what question to ask in order to find the answer to it. So there's a huge amount of information on that website, and it answers probably every question I could ever think of. But being able to give a user a manual that says, here is the information all in one place, I think would be a really good product and goal that I would have to put together for this thing, just to make it all in one place. And that's partly my problem, in that I am not a surfer on the web. I'm not as comfortable doing the searches to find the information. I want to go get it in one place. So that's something that I would personally probably start working towards.
That sounds good. And I would add, especially if other people are doing this, in addition to Pilar, keep in communication with our help desk. I mean, that's what it's for. And there are also already some enhanced PowerPoints for various parts of the suite that have been created or being improved and are currently circulating among the team and the help desk for improvement before we publish them. But it would certainly be useful to have other people, to have someone, whatever point of view you bring in, and Pilar too, to help with that process. But I don't want double or triple work to be done. People think they have to start from scratch with a new PowerPoint on how to use the counselor suite, when someone else might already have one 75% through that you could help enhance, but don't need to start over.
This actually might be a topic for the next meeting, is to have some demonstrations of the training materials that are available, because I don't tend to think in terms of the help desk doing that particular kind of work for the project, and so it might help all of us to have a sense of what those tools are.
Okay.
So Tim, do you already have one that you can send me, and then I'll
I think
look
there's
at
one
it and see?
there is one that's been circulating that's recent. It just hasn't. We're still tweaking it among the team and saying, take a look at this, and then someone will say, well, why don't you change this or change the wording here, or can you add a slide about this? But we'd love to send it to you. Let's get it in
Could
what
you
we
send it
think.
to the whole committee?
Sure. And let's get it to the point where we think it's about ready, and then we'll send it
That'd be
to
great.
the committee.
Sure. That'd be great.
I have a quick question. This may not be the appropriate time, so tell me if it's not. But what I noticed on Apply Texas, there are apps out there from 2009, 2008. Is there a plan to remove those from visibility? I mean, when you're searching, and I know we had an issue recently with the site being very, very slow, so I kind of wondered if that was the reason. And if we could hide that or put it in a behind-the-scenes database, so that if someone had a need to access it, there would be a way to do that. You would instruct us how to do it. But for our current searches for applications, limit that to maybe a couple of years.
Could we maybe have an agreement that if you are online and you find something that is ancient or something like that, that you send them to me or to someone, and we start compiling, because what you do is you find that while you're on your way somewhere else. And
the only thing I would be concerned about is limiting the time frame that a student can go in and update an old application. Because one of the great things for students who can go in and find their old application is to pull it up, copy it to a new application, update their information without having to go through the application itself. And I don't know. I noticed some are deleted, some aren't. I don't know what the current timeline is.
oh, so you're talking about old applications okay.
Yeah, just old applications appear to be kept.
Okay.
And when you're searching for an application, it's ginning through the entire history of Applied Texas. But I thought that if a student had not touched that application for a length of time, that it was no longer usable.
I think you're right, Tim and Tim need to say, but they usually are good for 2 years. Is that correct? Is it 2 years? We have students who are going in to update applications that they did several semesters ago.
We're talking about the whole application, or we're talking about the profile information?
Talking about the whole, if they had applied to us as a freshman and then took a year off and come back as a readmit, we say it's easy. You can go to, or go a semester abroad or whatever. Go to Apply Texas, copy your old application, and update. And that's a quick process for.
I'd like to ask David to respond.
Yeah.
After a length of file and not.
So we.
I think we mark them as 90 days.
So a couple things. We do have kind of a policy, as it were, for retaining apps. It was never the Applied Texas's responsibility to keep apps around for any purpose other than what was just mentioned about coming back and being able to look at a saved app and submit it after a certain amount of time, and being able to look at a submitted app for a certain amount of time and use it. It's always been, at least in the past, it's been kind of the philosophy that we're a pipeline between the student to the university, and then we want to kind of be done with it at that point. Now, recently being within the last couple of years, we were asked by the coordinating board to hang on to some things because they wanted to build a data warehouse with it, that they could use them for researchers, et cetera, to mine quite a bit, not every field on the app, but a lot of fields. And so we quit deleting apps. And so we've got, I don't know how far back we actually go. That's probably about right, 2009, 2007. 2009. So we're several years behind, in which does clog up the database to a certain extent. And we've got, over 8 million, 9 million records or something on file now. And so we would like to get to the point where we can delete those. And this kind of is the question about the data warehouse. I don't have what I think is a confident reply from the coordinating board that yes, the data you sent us, they're up to date on their data warehouse. We've sent them all those millions of records, and every night it's on part of our process to send the apps to the NSC, we send those same apps to the data warehouse. So thousands of record every night, thousands of app records every night are sent to the data warehouse and to the coordinating board, and I assume uploaded fairly quickly. I think we have a thing where they upload it fairly quick right away. But what happens is, since we're sending 8 million records, we've sent 8 million records with hundreds of fields. We want to make sure that what's in there is that it's working. So I know that some researchers have been in the data warehouse, but we're kind of looking for the coordinating board to come back and say, okay, we've either told somebody to go look at those fields, for a representative sampling of the records and see that they look right, or we've had 50 people in there doing extensive research and no one's ever said there was anything funky in a field that we need to look at, and then we could start to purge them. But we'd love to get back to only keeping a couple of years worth of data.
And this is another indication of what I have not had a chance to get into. The data warehouse is maintained by a different section of the coordinating board, and I will eventually get to that question, because we have seen requests from high schools asking for statistics from prior years when they did not retain it, and so in the very least, getting aggregate statistics from prior years. I don't know the research angle for use of that data, and I'll explore it with the powers that be in that area.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Are you
I'm done.
Okay. And I see that the next item is to vote on priority recommendations, but we've really already done that. The only issue now and was if any of these were policy changes. It seems that like Lee agreed that his was, and we're requesting that be sent to the Rules Making Committee. I don't know that any of the others are. They seem to be just changes and adding fields or changing fields. I don't know what your thought is on that. If we can just move forward with these and send Lee's to a rulemaking committee.
I would agree with you that with what we know now as to how they define an admission policy, that is the one that we have been discussing that would fall into that category. And we will simply keep you informed as or if other angles are identified of that sort. We are literally talking about decisions and discussions that are taking place, within the last couple of days. We're not keeping any information from you. We'll try to keep you informed as these things are developed. But we have the same problem you do in figuring out, well, what is an application policy as opposed to an admission question. You can work it around so that you think any change to an application has an impact on an admission, and therefore it's an admission policy issue. And I don't think there's any intent to go to that extreme, but where you find where the line of demarcation is, we don't know yet, and we're working on that kind of clarification.
And the only thing I would add to that is, if it turns out that a good number need to go, then it will impact when we need to know what you want to do. So we have our next meeting in April or May. If it turns out that a lot of the requests need to go through this process, we'll need to get that process started, and we can't wait till next December.
I would be quite amazed if indeed that tends to be true. I really do believe that the vast majority of what we're talking about are not policy decisions. But again, that's not going to be my final decision.
So I'm
we'll
assuming,
let you know as soon as we
yes, and I'm assuming that would be an April agenda item also?
Sure.
Just an update on both from Tim and from the THECB side on what they look like.
Right.
And I have just one procedural question for the two of you. Does the committee need to vote to authorize us to move forward with the subcommittee recommendations as in the order with the priorities as set?
I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, it sounds to me that there's been a decision by this group to go with the top priority of each committee and then go from there. And I think that type of a decision would be good to have.
Yeah, on record.
In record, yeah.
So can I have a motion on that order? that we would ask Tim and his group to act on the priorities that we've made by committee today. Can we have a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
You move then. Is there a second to that?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstention? Any against? Thank you. Motion carries. We're going to move forward.
I do not know when our next meeting will be. If we are scheduling a meeting for April or May, are there parts of those months? I assume the end of May is a bad idea.
Well, I think even the beginning of May
Is April better than May?
Yes, probably the end of April is
Okay.
better than.
All right. And are there any national conferences, state conferences in
We have
April
the
that we need
Illusion
to?
Conference the week right after Easter. The first weekend is Easter, and the next weekend we have the Illusion Conference.
Okay, so the 3rd or 4th week of April?
There's TACAC, which is April 9th through 11th as well.
I'm sorry?
TACAC.
Is when?
April 9th through 11th.
I can't hear you.
April
April 9th
9th
through 11th? Okay, sorry. And so, and the, you said, what is the other one?
The Illusion Conference is around the same time. Yeah, 11 through 15.
Okay. And acro? Okay, okay. So if we avoid those three sets of dates, those 2 sets of dates, then April is better than May, and after the 15th would be best. Is there a day of the week that you prefer?
Mondays.
Really?
Tuesday or Thursday.
Tuesday or Thursday?
Jane, is it possible or I'd like to make a request for us to possibly meet on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday so we wouldn't have to travel on a Sunday, just because for some of us we have other outside obligations and it's a little bit challenging.
Understood. You want to, is there, what about, does anyone have a problem, have a preference among Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or do we just see when the boardroom's available and go with that?
Well, I prefer that it not be the Thursday after the Aleutian Live conference. We can't get here.
Oh, yeah.
So
the 15th is what day of the week?
That's a Wednesday.
Okay, no, I would move to the next week.
Yeah, so either one.
Okay, so the week after that conference, either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, depending on
or the
availability.
next week.
Or the following week.
The best day.
Okay.
I don't have to be here.
It would be the week of the 20th of April?
Or the next week.
Or the week after that? Either the last week of April or the week before the last week of April?
Yeah, the third and fourth weeks of April.
Okay. All right. Again, pencil it on your calendar. We will let you know as more is known.
Sounds like somebody preferred that last week. Is that true or not?
For
Week
me
of the
it
20th?
is. For me it is, but that's okay.
The 4th week of April? So if we can get a room for that, for one of those 3 days, that would work, you think? Okay. We will let you know if there will be a meeting at that time, but we'll point for that week.
And I think at that time, too, and I had an opportunity to talk to Jarrell, that at that time we'll probably get some information on at least a general idea of what the restructure of this committee would look like, and some of that. So that'll be also an opportunity to see some of that. So we'll probably see some of that on the agenda also. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that.
So the things that we have on that meeting are any update on the negotiated rulemaking, seeing some of the training information that's available from the help desk. So in that case, perhaps seeing some PowerPoint or that kind of thing. And then the third one is an update on status of the committee.
Right, and also a little broader, an update on the items that we sent to Tim.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't we finalize the conference at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to add that to the agenda.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, at that time, we'll have more details about the Apply Texas workshop.
Okay.
I may have missed something, but is it, if we do meet in April, is it going to be for just one day?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay. So AT training information, the workshop, NRMC update, how the committee, what we know about the evolution of the committee or whatever, and update on Tim's, from Tim. Sounds good.
Are there any other issues that need to come up before the committee before we move to adjourn?
There is lunch.
Yes.
I just had I don't know if this needs to be an agenda item, but concerning the negotiated rulemaking, and will we have an update at that time? Will they have have had an opportunity to look at the nursing application and determine?
It takes a month to convene a negotiated rulemaking committee.
Okay.
Because of the way it is done by going to the presidents and chancellors, having them identify people, having the draft group of members be posted in the register and so forth. But so I would not expect to have any action by the negotiated rulemaking side until probably in June.
I think what you were asking was just an update, like where are we in that process?
Absolutely.
If at that time we would know if that was even an item that would go to the negotiated rulemaking.
Certainly, right.
Are there any other, does anyone have any questions that we would need to follow up with at this time? Again, I know we had a lot of discussion on the restructuring, and I'm sure that hopefully will be addressed.
Yes, it's an agenda item.
In April.
Yes.
So.
I can't stress enough how valuable the information you provide us is, and we recognize that. So the goal would be to salvage that, keep that to the extent that we can, and that's about as much as I can say at this time. We need you.
If there's no other questions or comments, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone against? No. And lunch is served.
Thank anybody.
Travel safely, everybody, when you're heading home. Thank you for coming.